Well, welcome everyone. I am Steve Savant. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Phoenix, Arizona on KXXT Family Values Radio. I also want to welcome our online audience on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I want to give a big shout out to Beyond Fear for Freedom. Listen, it's one of the best Christ-centered fellowships that you can go to, provides a very safe and loving community for women in recovery. Just go out to their site, beyondfeartofreedom.org. Day 3, Christina. We're talking about your story. Your story, there's a lot of people out there with your story now. Back in the day, maybe not so much. Yeah. Today, a ton of people are out there. Addictions, codependent relationships. They have prison jackets, 2, 3, 4 times in prison, in and out. Mm. The society pretty much writes everybody off at this time, right? Hey, there's no way to fix this person. They are on the scrap heap of humanity. They're the lowest rung on the ladder. But I'm always blown away, and we'll get this tomorrow's show, I'm always blown away that God has complete other ideas to go with us. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. You're going in now. You went in for now, what, 4 years? 4 years now. Was the time swift, or did it seem to drag?
No, this time it dragged.
It dragged.
It dragged because I lost custody of my kids early on in that prison sentence. And by now, all the drugs and everything are out of my system, and I'm just faced with myself and the realization of what I have actually done. And it was traumatic. They brought my daughters to me on Perryville for a 3-hour goodbye visit as my rights were being severed, and I had 3 hours in which to explain to my 2 young daughters why they weren't going to see me again for I did not know how long. And it didn't really affect them until the end. And I remember it just being probably to this day, my daughters remember this, and they were small, but they both remember being pulled off of me and put in the slider and made to stay on the other side while the officers came and got me and escorted me out. And we just watched each other go through the sliders, and that was the end of our relationship with each other for the next 13 years.
So 18, not going to see these children
until they're 18.
Yeah. I can't express to you how many women I've met over the last 15 years that have had their custody, not only their custody rights suspended or denied, but no visitation. And to not see your kids till you're 18, I mean, brutal. That is brutal. Okay, so you would think, now remember, I'm thinking like my audience is, I'm thinking like, they was, okay, finally we learned our lesson. Yeah. Lost the custody of my kids. I'm getting out of prison after 48 months down, and this time it was slow.
Yeah.
Now I've learned my lesson, and I'm going to try to straighten out my life.
No, that's not what happened. I got released in September of 2005. Relationships was my thing. I could not be in a relationship during that period of my life. Always this hole I'm trying to fill, and if I can't fill it with drugs, I'm going to fill it with something else. And so I was in another unhealthy relationship, but I got out in September of 2005, and I did my little 90 days in the halfway house that parole requires, where you're actually being scrutinized more closely. And then once I got out of that halfway house, I was able to find a doctor that would prescribe me medication because I convinced him that I needed it. And, that's so prevalent in our society now. But again, in the early 2000s, it was, you could kind of fly under the radar with that. So once again, being the master manipulating addict that I was, I found a way to stay completely numb and completely high, and now I can do it legal. See, because you can't tell me that I don't have these problems that I'm telling you that I have. And
now you got legal pharmaceuticals to take care of this issue. And by the way, when you were in the halfway house, how long did it take you to game that system?
Oh, yeah, no, that was easy. Yeah, within the first 90 days, I figured out a way. Oh, okay, so now this is what I've got to do to be able to stay high. That's all. I mean, I just needed to stay numb.
What is the substitute drug back in the day for heroin and crack? If they're giving you some medication, you're doing that, and now you're doing the medication, and you're still doing dope.
Yeah. So I was able to just do the pharmaceuticals for actually a few years, and again paint this picture for everybody that I'm, functional and clean and sober, and I had a pretty good job, and on the outside it all looked really, really good, but inside I'm rotten to the core.
Well, let me stop you there, because I think a lot of people think that, hey, if I'm shooting heroin and I'm doing crack all the time, how can I possibly hold down a job? But now you're holding down a job. You're functional at it.
Yeah. I'm a totally functional addict. I found a legal way to stay completely messed up out of my mind
And work.
So I got this picture painted for everybody that I'm just this really functional human being, and I was so far from that. And inevitably, as it always does, something comes along and messes up your game, and that was how I would fall into the relapse on heroin once again. So that happened several times from 2005 to 2014, and then in 2014, the doctors were just getting smarter now, and just being more strict about what was really going on with some of these drugs.
Are they not doing urine analysis at this time?
Well, by then, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So, the game was up for that. No more functional addict for me.
Or anybody, pretty much. If they're checking it at the door now.
Probably the first time that I got pulled for a UA, the game was up. And
did you know it was coming, or was it a surprise?
Oh, it was a total surprise. How dare they?
Yeah.
But yeah, so and immediately I go back to what I know, and it was shooting heroin. And then I'm an equal opportunity addict. So if I'm picking up one drug, now I'm picking up everything. So from 2000, it was like November of 2014 to August of 2015, I'm on my way back to prison again now. For the
What was
third
the
time.
charge this time?
Possession.
And then possession. Now, what was the time that they assigned to the sentence?
Well, it started out because I'm a repeat offender, and now I have 9 felony convictions for the same thing. Clearly, I'm not getting the message over the past 30 years that, so I was looking at, for 2 charges, 5 years on each, and, if the judge was to have stacked them, it would have been 10 years. He did stack them, but he stacked them because I asked him to. Because by the time I wound up in jail in 2015, I had lost my will to live. Like I just, every day of my life up to the day I got arrested it just became, what can I do to kill myself today, basically. And no matter what I did, no matter how many drugs I did, no matter who I ripped off or what line of fire I put myself in, I just kept, if I even slept, I just kept waking up the next day. I just kept breathing, and I didn't want to. I was done. I didn't want to.
I'm thinking about heading into Estrella jail, because that's your first stop, right? Heading back to Perryville. How was that? I mean, you did time in Tucson, but now you're in Perryville. You're in Estrella now, up in Phoenix.
Oh no, I went back to Tucson.
Oh, you did go back to Tucson.
Yeah, now I went back to Tucson. When I got out of prison the second time, now I decided to have a change of scenery, because the problem was
But it's
never
the same
me,
people down there, right?
It's never me. It's always
somebody else.
The environment or the city, or the laws are too strict there. So I paroled. The second time I paroled from Phoenix to Tucson, and also because my daughters were down there. And so, I had this idea in my mind that maybe if I paroled to Tucson, that they might let me see my kids.
And did they?
If I could. No. And praise God they didn't.
You were in no shape.
I was in no shape. I would have, and ultimately when I did see my kids, and that I talk about that a little bit in my story too. When I did see my kids, this thing that I had prayed for all these years, to be reunited with my daughters, when that moment came, I was bankrupt, mentally, emotionally. I was addicted to drugs. I was 92 pounds. I traumatized them yet again. But when I paroled to Tucson, I thought, with that same lack of accountability, or unwillingness to address how did I get here, how did this even happen. Now I'm 43 years old. I'm not even 18 anymore. Like, I've lost 25 years of my life, and I've inflicted all this damage on these two young lives, and they're standing right in front of me, and they've waited for this moment too. They've waited. Who is my mom? We've heard that she's some junkie. We've heard that she's a crackhead, but we want to see for ourselves. And that's exactly what they saw. And it was a shame.
Then when you're in jail, you have 5 years now, of course, because they stacked your 5 years.
They
right?
wanted to.
Oh.
Here's where God's grace comes in.
We'll catch that right after the break.
Grace and mercy.
We're talking about people in prison, addicts, codependent relationships, prostitution. When I think about stories that I've heard before, and that God has the ability to dig somebody out of a pit, even if they dug it themselves, that his arm is not too short, that he can't reach down and grab it. Boy, I can't wait for tomorrow's show, just beyond it. But we got to go to the next part of this whole story. We come back, we're going to finish up. We're heading back to prison for the third time with Christina O'Brien. We'll be right back after the break. Do you know who the music is?
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what the music is?
Yeah, it's
both of them. Both clips are Van Halen.
Oh yeah, Van Halen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Panama's first one, Where Is It Love? And one of the reasons is every time everybody hears that introduction music, they stay on the channel.
That's
Is that
good.
terrible?
That's a good. Huh?
Steve's a cheater.
How are we doing, Steve?
We're day 3,
Okay.
a second half. Then we're going to go right up. We're going to go to prison. We're going to talk about it, but not your conversion. We're going to do that Thursday. Conversion in Perryville.
Okay.
Right?
Well, it happened in Pima County, but okay. Yeah, it started in Pima County. Aww.
Your identity and your future. They'll keep you encouraged with some great insight and biblical truth. Just friend them on Facebook or go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. BFF, where you might just discover a best friend forever.
Well, thank you, BFF, for being a best friend to this gal, Christina O'Brien. Hey, we're talking about going to prison for the third time. I've met the number one gal I ever met was 5 times. Coming through RNA in my short 2 years of doing RNA. Think about that, 5 times. Wow, it's a lot. And boy, I tell you what, our head should get soft after you hit the concrete wall several times, but apparently we're resilient people.
Yes.
When you're a believer, you have no idea the capacity for pain that you can take on.
That's right.
I mean, wow. So you're heading into Perryville, you're being classified, and where'd they put you? Were they minimum, max? Where are you going this time?
For the third time?
Yeah.
So I was coming from Pima County Jail, and so this time, because it's been 12 years since I've been in, and I guess they maybe took my age and factored that in, and the severity of my crime, it was possession, so they actually sent me to a minimum yard. I was on San Pedro for most of my sentence the third time.
Now, when you went there, in the previous places that you went, you're going to the pagan, services, right? Now, I know they had that over there at Perryville. So is that what you did when you first got there?
No.
Or you just did nothing?
No, because when I was in Pima County Jail, I cried out to God when I was in Pima County Jail on the floor going through heroin withdrawals.
Can I stop you there just for a second?
Yeah.
A lot of people say they cry out to God, but when you're sitting there going through monster withdrawals without any help, how bad is crying out to God?
Crying out to God consists of, God, please just either help me or make me stop breathing. I don't care which one it is, just please. And in that moment, I was on suicide watch in Pima County Jail.
How did you even know to even call out to him?
I was at the bottom of the barrel.
Why do we always wait until we're at the bottom of the barrel?
Bottom of the barrel on the floor of Pima County Jail in a room with 6 other women on suicide watch, all of us kicking heroin simultaneously.
Nobody cares about who's yelling or screaming out to God.
Nobody can, and you know, I had ruined every relationship. I had burnt everybody. Nobody even knew where I was, even knew that I was alive or cared.
Mm-hmm.
It was the end as far as I was concerned. I mean, literally, I will never forget that moment of being on that jail cell floor and asking God, please help me stop breathing or help me do something, but I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up getting out of suicide watch and being put in a room as I'm still withdrawing from heroin, locked in a 2-man cell in Pima County with a girl who wanted to talk about Jesus.
To you.
To me. And I was laying on the top bunk, locked in the room with this girl asking me, has anybody ever told you about Jesus? And I'm like, are you serious?
So now you're saddled with some Jesus freak as a cellie. That's what you're telling me.
Yes.
Okay. And you weren't very enthusiastic about it.
No, I was trapped in the room. Now, in hindsight, I can look back and praise Jesus. He
For her,
orchestrated that so beautifully, you know.
You were
Trapped
having
me.
nothing of it, though.
No,
You're not having nothing.
Not in the beginning, but she just wouldn't stop. And so she was reading me the story of Joseph and just reading her Bible. And so we were trapped in there for 23 hours a day, you know. And in the process of her asking me that question, has anybody ever told you about Jesus? I remembered a lady from 15 years prior who had actually tried to tell me about Jesus. And I ended up reaching out to that lady and calling her, and she's one of my dearest friends, and she's the only person. It just so happened one of, you know, the Jesus people. It was one of the Jesus people that actually came to my side at my darkest hour and was my friend when I didn't have any.
But you're not yet ready to go.
No,
You're not ready to sign up under the kingdom.
No. I did ask Jesus into my heart in that cell with that girl. And here's the thing, you know, when we're talking about God's divine plan and so forth, I knew that girl from the street, so she was familiar enough that I would, you know, I wasn't going to be rude when she was talking about Jesus. I ended up saying a prayer with her and surrendering my life to Christ in that room. She was released, and 2 months after she was released, she got hit and killed by a drunk driver as she was crossing the street. And that has always just struck me, like God put us together in that room for that moment, because he knew, even before I did, that this was going to be the time and this was going to be the moment that I was going to hear his voice. And he used that girl and
Down in Tucson.
Down in
And
Tucson in the jail, and now she's not here anymore.
Okay. Then when you got transferred up to Perryville, right? Are you still God conscious yet, or not really?
I'm starting to, you know. I didn't have a Bible yet. But I knew that whatever this peace that I had in my heart after crying out to God and just being overwhelmed with this peace that contradicted the circumstances I was in.
Do you think you're done with scamming and being a gamer?
This time, yeah.
This time.
Yeah.
How did that feel? How did you even get to that point where you said, I am done gaming the system here?
It was a gradual process over my last time in Perryville, you know, and it started with just these little decisions that I would make to do what I said I was going to do in that moment, or be where I say I was going to be, or, you know, I started reading the Word of God in Perryville then at that point in time, and I really was struck by, when I did ask God to help me, how he showed up through my friend, and she showed me Jesus in a way that, you know, to this day, I realized that I didn't deserve anything from anybody. And God saw to it that I was given friendship and provided, you know, that companionship.
And you didn't write her off.
And I didn't. And I
know.
didn't. And
Did that shock you?
I didn't write her off, and I was so grateful to just have somebody that it was not like well, what can I get out of this situation, or what can this person do for me? Anything and everything then that people did for me, or that God provided for me, I appreciated with my whole heart, because I realized that you come face to face with the awful person that you are at some point in time. I think when God gets a hold of you, you have that moment of reckoning, where you realize, I deserve nothing, and yet He is kind to me.
I'm still a little shocked that you did not blow off this gal's sharing with you. I mean, because you were hard, your heart was seared, you didn't have any God leanings, you weren't really seeking them out until you hit the floor during cold turkey. I mean, that sometimes that's just shock and awe to your system when you're going through not only the withdrawal, but your whole soul's being turned inside out. And then all of a sudden he parks a celly in there that actually starts talking to you about the Lord, and you're not turned off.
No, I was desperate.
That's what I like about coming to him. I was the same way. Desperation. It has to happen, or it's not. I'm done with life. It has to happen. If you're listening to this story and you say, hey, I'm there, I live in this narrative that we're talking about, remember, you can go out to Beyond Fear to Freedom and visit these gals. These gals, they have been through the ringer. They know what they're talking about, and boy, do they have the Lord in a big way. I also want to talk about this thing, at Perryville, here we are, third time, you're kind of a veteran now, you're no rookie. When you went to Perryville, when did you start going to services?
Pretty early on. I got out of RNA, and within a month, I started going to services. Now I'm in communication with my friend from 15 years prior, and she's accepting my phone calls and stuff, and praying with me, and encouraging me. One of her favorite sayings to me was just keep looking up, and she would send me scriptures and stuff and encourage me, if they're having services in prison, you should go. So I did. I became very teachable all of a sudden for someone who was so arrogant and so full of myself and such a victim my whole life. At this last time in prison, I just surrendered. I surrendered to Christ. I surrendered to authority. I surrendered to whatever way was going to help me not be the way that I had been all those years, because I didn't want to be that way. I did not.
So I'm drawing from this, that laying on the floor during your last withdrawal scene, the last cold turkey, that was the bottom.
That was the
bottom. I think sometimes that when we're looking for a Damascus Road experience, that becomes such an awakening that it knocks you out of your stupor. You've been so anesthetized for so many years, decades and decades, and all of a sudden he breaks through with a little voice from some gal that you're parked with inside yourself. I mean, to me, that is amazing, amazing. Okay, now, what about any temptations when you first arrived for your third stint at Perryville? Any temptations? Because there's a lot over there.
No, I didn't. In fact, I quit smoking. So when you're in county, you can't smoke, right? And when I got to prison, that's all we can do then is smoke and drink coffee. And somewhere along the line, that scripture that talks about, it's in Romans 12:1, where it talks about offering your body as a living sacrifice out of gratitude for what the Lord has done for you. I had that much realization that God had delivered me from the deep depths of darkness. So I wanted to, whatever that meant, honor him with my body. So I quit smoking. And that was the beginning of the sober lifestyle that I live today.
Well, tomorrow we're going to talk about redemption is on its way. Listen, all this week we're unpacking Christina's story, so you won't want to miss an episode. And don't forget to check the BFF meeting on Friday night at 5:30 for food and fellowship, and 6:15 for the best sharing you've ever experienced. And childcare is provided. For more information, just go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. So until next time, I'm Steve Savant with the best job in America. No one's outside the reach of God. No, not one.